Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corn Productions with my co-host Stacie, here to talk about Sullivan's Crossing, Season 1, Episode 2, titled Homewreckers. The episode's description reads as follows. Maggie wants to go back to Boston, but a new lawsuit threatens her medical license. Her lawyer tells her to stay out of sight. She's stuck. An elderly neighbor suffering dementia hits his head in a fall. Her boyfriend Andrew arrives. The episode was written by series creator Roma Roth, Tanche Redvers, she's actually credited as story editor here, and based on the book by Robin Carr. The episode was directed by Gail Harvey. She's credited with 4 episodes on the series, 6 episodes of Virgin River, 53 directorial stints overall. Before going any further, I'll tell you a couple of things. 1, this is not a sport-free podcast, so if you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend you go and check it out, and then come back and give us a listen. Secondly, if you're on one of the platforms of this podcast is now available on, please subscribe. You can also head over to my YouTube channel, Corn Productions, where additional content can be discovered. If you're already on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, as well as subscribing to my channel. Okay, so shout out this week for Skylar Anderson. She was a last minute, basically, comment on our podcast.
Okay.
And she basically said that she already watched all 10 episodes.
Oh, yes, I did see that comment.
And it gets better and better as the series progresses.
Yeah, which is true of most of the shows we watch.
So, welcome to the channel, Skylar Anderson. You know, funny story. Last week, when we were just about to record, I expressed skepticism that anybody would watch this particular podcast because I didn't have any social media to really share it on.
Right.
You know, the Facebook groups that I usually rely on, I didn't belong to many of them. So I thought we were going to get like 5 views. Well, that turned out to be way off the mark. We ended up with over 800 views.
In the first 6 days.
Yes, in the first 6 days, which is, you know, highly unusual. Once again, we had a lot of reaction from the cast. We had the writer of the episode liking the Twitter post on it. We had Reed Price sharing it on his social media. So shout out to him for that. So yeah, and one of the reasons why I wasn't committed to doing every episode this season is because I didn't think anybody would care.
Right.
But that turns out that not to be the case.
Yeah,
there's quite a bit of reaction.
And we watched the second episode.
We did.
And we care.
Yep.
So we're going to just keep going.
Yes, absolutely.
We're going to keep going. And I have another shout out. We're going to actually revisit episode 1 for just a minute. And my first shout out is for Faith Shavs.
Yep.
She's a Nova Scotian background actress, huge supporter of our channel and all of my social media posts, really across all platforms. Thank you, Faith, for always liking and sharing and commenting on everything. That is so wonderful of you. She's also a big supporter of the What Is From cast, and she's actually appeared on some of their Instagram lives and things like that. Faith is a huge fan of From, but she hasn't actually worked on that show yet. She has ambitions to do so, to appear, you know, as a background actress in that show. Unfortunately, her schedule conflicted when they were hiring their extras in the last 2 seasons, so she wasn't able to do that. But she's hoping that she gets in on it in season 3. But Faith does appear in Sullivan's Crossing. She did make an appearance in episode 1. I'm going to show you a screenshot here. She is the nurse taking care of Kevin Markiff in that first hospital scene in episode 1. And from what I understand, we're going to get some more flashbacks to that scene, so we'll see her again in that role as the nurse there. We only get to see the back of her head. She doesn't turn around, but maybe next time.
You know what I'll say I also noticed? She's also a Quantum Leap fan.
She is.
Because she liked my Quantum Leap post.
Yes,
as well.
I had put up a post, unrelated to what we're talking about today, but I had put up a post comparing an element from Quantum Leap and From. And being a big From fan, I would have expected her to pick From. I was asking who did it better, and she picked the Quantum Leap character.
That she did.
Yeah, so she is a Quantum Leap fan, and hopefully listens to us as well. I think so, based on all the interactions. But so yeah, she plays the background nurse treating Kevin Markiff, and Kevin Markiff played by Tristan Lewis Kays. That is the gentleman who only had broken bones, but then died, and his mother's now suing Maggie. And Faith can also be seen at some point as a customer dining in one of the episodes. I don't think we've seen that scene yet. So Faith also introduced me to the actress who played Kevin Markiff's mom, Claire Markiff. And we also saw her in episode 1, and this is her right here in this screenshot. And it looks like we're going to see her a couple more times based on IMDb credits.
Yes, I think she's listed for like 4 or 6 episodes.
Yeah, so of course we've only seen the first 2 episodes here in the States, so we're not sure exactly how much that's going to entail, but her character, of course, is important, right? That she was mentioned in this episode.
She's basically the inciting incident character.
Right.
She's what sets off all the the incidents.
Right, and that actress that plays Claire is Shelley Thompson. And Shelley has 58 acting credits according to her IMDb, including the recurring character of Barb in Trailer Park Boys, appearing in 85 episodes of their main series, as well as appearances in their other movies. And she also appeared in the series King and Pawn with Reed Price, and we've brought that show up a few times. And do you remember that movie that we were talking about that Reed won an award for?
Yes.
Dawn, Her Dad, and the Tractor. Well, Shelley Thompson's the writer, director, and producer of that movie. That is her baby. And I've heard Reed speak very highly of her before in interviews. I think he mentioned her briefly in our interview. We didn't really get into that movie too much because we haven't seen it. But I hadn't made the connection that this is the actress who plays, that patient's mom in Sullivan's Crossing. She was just such a small blip in our episode 1 thoughts, right?
Yep.
But now putting it all together, that's just amazing. And again, Faith introduced me to Shelley. And Shelley has a book coming out on Halloween called Roar, which is based on the screenplay of Dawn, Her Dad, and the Tractor. And we have the honor of speaking with Shelley about that book.
Yes, that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, so we have an upcoming interview with her, and that'll be available on our channel soon. So make sure you look out for that, where she'll be telling us a little bit more about Roar. And also notable to mention, Shelley's son, T. Thomason, is the actor who plays climbing expert Jackson on this series, who we first met in episode 1. And he made another appearance in this episode. Looks like he's going to be a kind of mainstay character that we see a lot of.
Yep. So
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, lots of good stuff to look forward to here. So, Stacie, your thoughts overall on episode 2?
I liked it. I liked that we got a chance to kind of dig a little deeper into this environment, right? First episode, the thing we were, I think, most critical of is it was just like, okay, we're meeting so many people that we didn't really get a chance to sit with any of them a lot in the first episode.
Yeah, that was one of my main problems. The other is that Maggie kind of came off as unlikable.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like that was fixed within this episode.
Yeah, I feel like it's more, they're really pushing like a difference of just like the way she does things and the way she thinks, compared to the atmosphere of Sullivan's Crossing.
Now, part of it is also we're seeing her on basically her worst day.
Right.
This is not her finest hour.
And in this episode, we get to see her finally opening up to people and telling them what's going on and why she's just being so miserable.
Right.
And she makes some good bonds in this episode. We get to see, again, more of all of our main characters. We learn a lot about everybody. And we get to see them just kind of like relaxing for a minute, right? Outside of that, let's meet everybody.
So far, this seems kind of like a slice of life kind of story, like a kind of series. It's like, we're just kind of hanging out with these characters and going through their lives. That's kind of what it feels like. And, it was a pretty nicely done episode. I think it was definitely an improvement over episode 1. As Skylar mentioned at in our comments, that this series gets better and better as it goes along. So I'm looking forward to that for sure. Any other thoughts before getting into this thing?
No, let's dive into our scene by scene.
All right. We open on a Maggie nightmare sequence. She's back in the hospital. She's calling out hello when she sees the staff basically staring at her.
Yeah, and Kevin Markiff is there.
And is that one of the women in that, is that Faith?
I didn't see Faith in that, that scene, no.
So, yeah,
I might have missed her, but I don't think Faith was there. I saw Kevin Markiff was there. as well as her dad was there.
Yes.
And Lola was there.
Yeah, I was wondering. It was like, wait, is that Roy's granddaughter?
Yeah.
And Sully's arm is draped over her.
Right.
What does that mean?
So Sully and Lola, in this dream, Sully and Lola walk off together in an embrace. And I took that perhaps as cluing us in a bit on, the reason she has some resentment against Lola, right? We already saw that when we first met Lola at the campfire in episode 1, where she was kind of like, she's still here? Like, you could see something.
So I'm wondering if there was like some kind of affair between the two of them.
Oh,
you think something
I wasn't going there.
No,
the impression I got was perhaps that Sully was more of a father to Lola than he was to Maggie. Like that there was some jealousy over the fact that he had some kind of a, fatherly relationship with her.
Yeah, I was thinking perhaps that
that's possible. Who knows?
Lola, but I mean, I guess they were like 15-year-olds, so maybe not the
whatever
direction
happened in Maggie's past, the age 15 has been brought up.
Right.
So this has something to do with then, and I'm sure we'll continue to learn about this, but something happened between Lola and Maggie, and I just got the impression that she's jealous of Lola's relationship with Sully. And I think, again, in a father-daughterly way, not
in an affair, toward affair.
I don't think so. I mean, who knows?
We'll definitely see. But I mean, if the character was underage at the time, then maybe
that's not where they're going with this. I don't think.
All right, so she ends up waking up in her bed in Sullivan's Crossing. She calls her lawyer and insists she needs to come home. The lawyer just tells her that he'll call the hospital and let her know when there's some news, which means she's not going to hear from him for a while.
Which is pretty much the same thing he told her last time they spoke, which was just the night before, I think, right before she went to bed. And this lawyer, his name is Scott, and he's played by David Christoffel. And David also appeared in Dawn, Her Dad, and the Tractor.
Oh, okay.
And he has one credit in From.
Interesting.
He plays the character of Eli. And Eli's credited in being in episode 8. So we've probably seen David in, I'm guessing he's also appeared, as a background in other episodes. But by getting that credit tells me he had a line in episode 8. And we haven't revisited episode 8 in a while. Our rewatches were only through, 5 episodes?
5 episodes.
So we'll have to look for him when we get to episode 8. I think he might be the person who was complaining about the Colony House residents staying in their basements.
Oh, okay.
Episode 8. So yeah, this is when all of Colony House moved into the town after the events of episode 7. So and remember, there was somebody who was really grumpy about it, I don't want these people living in my house and eating my food. I think that might have been Eli. I'm not positive, so we'll have to keep our eye out for him.
Well, he must be a swell guy because we share the same name. So
yeah.
All right. I'm sure I've made that joke in the past. All right. So she ends up going through her dad's medicine cabinet.
Yeah, she's in the bathroom trying to get ready for the day.
She throws out some expired medication. She tries the water. There's nothing.
There's no water at all, which is weird.
Yeah. And later on, it'll be
we get the answer later. But as I was watching this, I was not quite live tweeting because I didn't watch it live because, unfortunately, this show airs the same time as another show we cover, Quantum Leap.
Yep.
So I was watching this the next day. And I was tweeting as I was, or Xing, I guess you'd call it, as I was watching. And that was one of my comments was is there no water at all? Or just in this bathroom? Or what's going on here? But we do get an answer to that a little later in the episode.
She looks at herself in the mirror and says, "You got this." And it's funny because I occasionally do this. If you have less than stellar self-esteem or, depression or anxiety issues, actually looking at yourself in the mirror and giving yourself positive affirmations is actually helpful. It feels silly, but it does actually work.
That's good to know.
And credits.
And credits. And this is where we learned that song that played during episode 1 while she was first driving to Sullivan's Crossing is the theme song of the series. Now, we had learned that already while we were looking up information on the show. But this is where we first see it play out, right? Of course, that happens a lot. You don't get the theme song during the introductory episode.
Right.
We get it here, and I really loved it. It's it felt very nostalgic of 90s television. We're hearing this song and they're putting up these images of all of the people while they say their, the actors' names. A full opening credits that we don't get with every show anymore.
No Reed Price in the opening credits.
No, Reed Price and Lindura did not make it into those opening credits. And,
but we do see a way more of them this episode.
Yeah.
So if you're watching this series for Reed Price, you get to see, as I kind of am,
as you started to.
Yeah, you get to see him more in this episode.
Yeah.
So that's another positive for this episode. All right, so when we come back, we see Maggie going through the fridge and silently judging Sully.
Yeah, she's looking for breakfast. There is nothing edible in this refrigerator.
One container has like bugs in it. Is that for like fishing?
It was worms.
Okay,
yeah, worms for fishing. I grew up in a household where you might find a random butter container full of worms in the fridge. So yeah, that resonated with me. My mom was a fisher.
So she ends up going into town. She gets a call from her mother, who wants to get her a better lawyer. But interference cuts the call short, and you get the impression that Maggie is not all that sad about that.
Yeah, Maggie blows her mom off pretty quickly. She's like, I already have a lawyer,
right.
Mom. I don't, whatever you're doing right now, no.
She goes into Rob's, which is
Shandon's Diner.
Shandon's Diner, okay. I completely forgot the name of that.
That's their last name.
Yep, right, of course. We're getting a quicker, wow, okay, I'm sorry. We're getting to Reed Price quicker in this episode.
Now, a couple things I want to point out. It showed her driving to town. Mm-hmm. We got this whole like montage with establishing shots of the water, beautiful footage.
They're really taking advantage of the scenery from this part of town.
But sure. I want to keep that in mind because I have something to say about it later.
Okay.
That they gave us like a full 30-second overview of her driving and showing lots of establishing shots. Making it look like this town and this diner is not all that close.
Right.
That becomes important later.
Okay.
It might be a little nitpicky, but
I think I know what you're talking about.
That felt a little weird to me.
Right.
Okay, so the diner. This is our first time going inside the diner. Mm-hmm. And well, you know this because you were here, but last week after we finished recording,
right,
we were talking about the show, we were talking about the diner, and I found on Google Maps the actual real life diner where the exterior shots were filmed. And I thought that was pretty impressive of me to do because we'd only seen it for a second in the first episode.
Yes, your talents are seriously misapplied. You should be working in like the CIA or so on and so forth.
I found the real life location of the exterior, and that is the Halley Deli in Halifax. I don't know if I actually should have said that or not. Maybe they don't want people to know, but I found it pretty easily, so it can't be that secret. But I was excited. So like when we were looking up that deli, I looked at the inside pictures. I was like, I like this place. This is a really cool place. I love the core of it. And I said, I wonder if they're used the same building for the interior shots, or if it was just, the exterior facade that we saw. Well, now that we went inside the diner, we got confirmation it is, in fact, used for the exterior and the interior shots. And I love it. This place just looks so cool. I want to visit there. It's got all of these old, like posters and signs on the walls. Really reminds me of, my own kitchen aesthetic that I am aiming for.
Yeah, I was thinking when I was looking at those pictures that like, wow, this looks like a place that Stacie would really like to go.
Yeah.
For sure. And also, I kind of, maybe someday we will actually go there.
Maybe someday we will go to Halifax and visit some of these locations. I'd love to do that. First, we got to get passports.
Right. Yeah, that's something Adam and I and you constantly talk about, going to the From set, going to now this place. But, all right, so also present in the scene is Cal, and he's asking her how her morning is going. She says she's great, but I don't believe her.
Yeah, it was a kind of another weird interaction between them. Rob was getting Maggie coffee. Cal is tapping on the counter, showing some signs of anxiety himself. He's waiting to pay his bill.
And she's like, can you please stop that because I got a headache? And he mentioned, sorry, nervous habit. And she's like, oh, do I make you nervous? Well, Maggie, you kind of make me a little bit nervous. But yeah, so he's in and out of that scene. Maggie ends up asking Rob about what Cal's story is. Rob doesn't know much.
Yeah, he said he's a nice guy who helps Sully out and keeps to himself a lot. That's really all he knows. Mm-hmm.
Sydney comes in to relieve him, and I think Rob is going to get his son on the bus or take him to school or something?
He's taking Finn to school, I believe. Yeah, so she says, Finn's going to be late if you don't leave right now. And Rob's like, oh, I lost track of time.
Right.
Because, he was serving breakfast, so they probably started at, 5 or 6 a.m.
So bye for now, Mr. Price.
Yeah, so my comments here, Sydney's a great sister and aunt. Like, we know she came to help Rob raise Finn after his wife died.
Yep.
But he was like, she made sure that Rob had Finn's lunch and the homework and an EpiPen. That spells really not great foreshadowing for me.
Right.
Telling us that there's a need for an EpiPen means something not great's going to happen.
Right.
That's going to come into play.
Some kind of seizure.
Yeah, especially now that we know, Maggie's a doctor.
Right.
They're going to find all these opportunities to use her medical skills.
I'm sure they're absolutely going to do that.
So I'm a little worried. And at first I was like, who needs the EpiPen? Is it Rob or Finn? But I think Finn, based on the fact that it was listed with, homework and lunch and all of these things that was specifically for Finn. So yeah, he rushes out of there. Sid takes over behind the counter and Maggie finally unloads on somebody, right?
Yep. Sydney is surprised that Maggie is still there, and she ends up explaining that Bob Hollis was indicted for billing fraud.
Right. Remember last week we weren't really sure exactly what he was arrested for. We were given now the charge of billing fraud. And
that she's also getting sued. Now, she mentions that she can't go back to work until she's cleared of wrongdoing. For which situation is she talking about? Is she talking about the Bob Hollis situation or the one she's getting sued for? Because, okay, so I mentioned last week that part of the life of a doctor is getting sued and dealing with lawsuits. Now, when you get sued and get, hit with a lawsuit, that doesn't stop you from working.
Well, okay, so she worked for Bob.
Right.
She didn't work for the hospital.
Okay.
She consulted with the hospital as part of her employment through Bob's office.
Gotcha.
So her actual job is gone.
Right.
That's the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we heard last week that the hospital revoked her, I forget what the word was, something.
Privileges?
Probably, privileges, yeah. So because she's no longer working at the, medical office that she worked at, she no longer has that consulting position either.
Okay.
Because she's not actually employed by the hospital. And now they don't want to employ her because her reputation's been tarnished.
Right.
So I think it boils down to she doesn't actually have a job to go to.
Okay. And so actually, technically, basically both of these situations is kind of prevented her from working there.
It's because, and this is me speculating, I think that, because of the publicity surrounding the Bob thing.
Right.
Is part of the reason that her lawyer's like, let's not go public right now. Because that's going to just, talking about the lawsuit while that's still in the media is just going to add fuel to the fire and hurt your reputation more.
Right.
When it doesn't need to. Mm-hmm. So really it's, him just saying, stay where you're at.
Okay, so
added to the fact that she doesn't technically have a position anymore.
Gotcha. So that situation makes all in all more sense to me now than it did before. All right, so she ends up asking about Sydney's situation. She ended up dating her manager as a model, and she came home when Rob's wife died, which we already knew. We didn't know this. We didn't know this.
Right. So now we're learning she didn't just come home out of the goodness of her heart to help her brother. She came home because of some fallout. She made a comment like, I learned that it's not a good career move to date your manager when you're a model. Right. Well, that's probably not a good career move, no matter what line of work you're in.
Yes, that's accurate.
Dating your manager is a bad idea.
Yes, do not do it, ladies and gentlemen.
Do not do it.
Important safety tip, keep that in mind. All right, so Maggie ends up happening upon Frank and Sully. I almost said Scully. That's a different show entirely. Sitting on the porch on the way into the store, and she wants to use the fax. Sully ends up ribbing her a little bit, and then says that she needs to help stock the shelves because there are no freeloaders in town.
Yeah. Wouldn't it have been easier for her to find a place to use a fax machine while she was in town?
Possibly. I'm surprised Rob... Well, actually, I guess I'm not surprised that Rob doesn't have one, but...
I mean, they might. She could have asked them, or, is there like a... I mean... This is a small town. We would go to like a Staples or Kinko's or something.
Right.
There's got to be something in town, though.
I'm sure there is.
That offers that service, even if it's not like a big store like that, that you'd expect to find better than at the campground.
Right.
Like, I don't know. I would think she should have looked into that before heading back home.
Maybe. Frank ends up shaking his head at this interaction. He clearly doesn't necessarily approve about what he's watching from Sully's attitude.
Yeah.
Maggie ends up entering the store and runs into Edna. Now, it's funny, because this actress, I forgot her actual name.
Andrea Menard.
Andrea Menard bears a striking resemblance to Lauren Graham, who was on a CW show.
Okay. I see it.
Yeah.
I see it.
So I'm kind of wondering if that's perhaps why she was cast. because she does kind of look like her. And she was, you know...
Well, again, I'm going to remind you, CW did not produce this show.
Right, okay.
They just picked it up.
Okay.
It was produced by, I'm not going to say who, because I'm not positive. Someone in Canada.
Okay, someone in Canada. All right, so she's being pointed in the general direction of the facts, which Maggie can't figure out.
Yeah, so what Ed is dealing with right now is the refrigerator's on the fritz.
Mm-hmm.
And this is our second time in 2 episodes we've gotten told that the equipment she's working with in this kitchen is old and broken, and Sully is too cheap to replace any of it.
Mm-hmm.
So she's doing a lot. She's trying to clean out the fridge. She said she's in a rush because it's her turn to check on Roy, and she's bringing him a lobster casserole. Again, reinforcing the fact that everybody is helping take care of this man. Even though he's living alone, everybody's trying to chip in and make sure he's okay.
And it's kind of funny that Maggie doesn't make the same type of comments that she was making last week about the situation. And it's perhaps because she's distracted by this whole back situation. But one of the kids that we met last week enters. He's late to work.
That's Jackson.
The
one played by T. Thomason.
There's 2 of these characters, and I couldn't figure out which was which. So I figured I would just rely on you to help me with that.
Yeah, so this is Jackson. And so we learn now here that he's actually working at Sullivan's Crossing.
Right.
We met him last week knowing that he's a climbing expert.
Mm-hmm.
And in this scene, we learned that he's off in a rush to talk to a client. So I'm thinking, is he, like, is that someone who he's taking climbing?
Right.
As part of his job at Sullivan's Crossing? I'm a little unclear about exactly what Jackson does here. But he was late, and it was like, you got to be more on time if you're going to work here. This is a responsibility.
Yeah, Jackson.
And we had this moment.
Yeah, where he goes to try to help Maggie figure out the fax technology, and he doesn't even know what a fax is.
Yeah, he goes, what is that?
Now, okay, is this because this is really outdated technology, or is it because these people are so backward that they don't really know what that kind of technology is?
I took this as Jackson is really young.
Yes.
Last week, I remember, like, questioning, conversation between Jackson and Maggie, and your response to as well, he's young.
Right, I did say that.
I think I caught it now. Like, oh, he's young.
Mm-hmm.
I thought maybe he was a little bit older.
Right.
Last week when we met him. To not know what a fax machine is. And this moment is one of those ones that just made me feel ridiculously old.
Well, we still use
machines. Like, as Maggie pointed out, it's used in the medical community because of like privacy laws and things like that. I used fax machines when I worked in housing.
Right.
It is something that's still used in certain industries. Of course, it's used a lot less commonly than it was 10, 20 years ago.
Right.
But yeah, I took this as Jackson's really young.
Yes.
Because anybody our age knows what a fax machine. Anybody.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know. Let's take a poll. Anybody who's in their 40s, do you know what a fax machine is?
Yeah. And did anybody else, and this is actually something I'd love to ask T. Thomason, is like, do you actually know what a fax machine is? Or was this, just specific to your character? I'm actually really curious.
Mm-hmm.
Any young people watching even, let us know. Did anybody share in Jackson's, like, what is that?
Right,
Does everybody here know what a fax machine is? I'm honestly, genuinely curious.
Do you know what a record player is? Anyway, moving along. Cal ends up entering and is able to help really quickly. He leaves, and Maggie says that he's really annoying.
Yeah, so he was like, let me take a look. And she's like, obviously it's broken. He touches, like, one button, and it works. He knows what a fax machine is.
Yes. Don't you hate, because he's in his 40s, he's already. But don't you hate when you're struggling with something, and then the answer, someone comes along and then pushes a button, and then, there it works.
Yeah, I'm usually that latter person, so.
Okay. Maggie shares with Edna that she's getting sued. She ends up breaking down a little bit. She's crying. Edna says she believes her, that things look bad, but they will end up getting better. And light some sage and put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, light some sage and put one foot in front of the other.
I found that advice really amusing because in the Quantum Leap episode 1, that's, not the way the sage part, but to put your foot.
Put one foot in front of the other. It came up in our Quantum Leap season 2, episode 1 discussion. And again reminds me of the Christmas special.
Right.
Which I inaccurately attributed in our Quantum Leap discussion. I said it was Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. The song's actually from Santa Claus is Coming to Town.
Oh,
it's in the special Santa Claus is Coming to Town that we get this song. put one foot in front of the other. And yeah, twice in like a week that's come up for us and things that we're covering.
Yep. They end up hugging, and then we cut to Sully and Frank talking. I love this scene, and I'll tell you why. He ends up not saying out loud what they're specifically talking about. And what they are talking about is basically Sully fixing his relationship with his daughter.
Yeah.
And they at no point do they actually say that.
Right.
But the subtext is all there.
It's absolutely it's a very similar discussion we've seen between them before is Frank's kind of giving Sully a lecture. You know, you need to be there for Maggie. And he's basically like, it's too late.
And what we also hear here is we get hints that Sully is actually an alcoholic.
Right. We get hints of in the meetings.
Right.
It's so great, Dave, how what you and I have like to say in our notes align so well.
Right.
We're getting really good at this because everything you're saying is following directly in line with my notes.
Wow. That's that's a difference from when we were just doing Under the Dome not that long ago.
Yeah, that's because we decided to do a different format and we
yeah.
kind of broke each other on that one a little bit.
Yeah, that's all right though. All right. So we find out that Sully is basically a recovering alcoholic. Once again, this is not specifically stated, but there is a reference to being. Yeah,
it's between the lines there, and that will be confirmed later in the episode.
We cut back to Edna. A guy comes in. He's one half of a gay couple.
Yep, they're here on their honeymoon. This character is James Fish.
Right. And
he's played by Jacob Crichton. And his husband, Jim, played by Mitchell Aguinera. I may have gotten that wrong. I'm sorry. Husband Jim is not happy with their rustic camping honeymoon at all. Things are not going great. He's actually like locked himself in the car and refuses to go back into their cabin. And Edna gives them a free upgrade to one of their brand new VIP cabins. We've mentioned these brand new trailers a few times that everyone's surprised Sully sprung for. And this tells us a lot about Edna's character.
Yes.
It also kind of tells us why the bills are stacking up around here.
Right.
We've already got a few hints that, they're not doing great financially.
And we'll get more in this episode.
So, I don't know, giving people free upgrades isn't helping that any.
Right. Also in this discussion, we get a little bit of conversation about Treaty 1 territory versus Treaty 6 territory. This is in reference to the number of treaties of Canada between Native Americans. I could have written in my notes a whole Wikipedia. Sorry, excuse me, I'm having trouble talking all of a sudden. Whole Wikipedia, water is good. A whole Wikipedia entry that I found on that, but I decided against it. But basically, these were the number of treaties that Canada reached with Native Americans. These treaties are actually kind of controversial between the two sides because on the one hand, the Native Americans think that they are owed more by that treaty than the government thinks.
Well, so that sounds typical.
Yes, so they're in court constantly fighting for their rights. But I found this conversation was really quick and really hard to like totally take in. So I watched it multiple times and then ended up looking some of this stuff up. So that's what they were talking about within that scene, is the number of treaties. She mentions that this is Treaty 1 territory, but her husband, Frank, is actually from Treaty 6 territory, which is, so I think the number of treaties was 1 to 11. And who would be better to discuss this would probably be Adam himself, but that's what I was able to glean.
My husband just seems to know everything about everything. History related and social studies related.
Yeah.
Neither Dave nor I are great at that, right?
No.
Not in general.
But in case you were curious, that's what that little discussion was about. So Maggie ends up making a reference to remembering Sully being more organized, and Edna says he let himself go after his mother left him and Maggie went with them.
Yes, after Maggie's mother took her away.
And I'm curious if this is when he became an alcoholic or if he was an alcoholic already. And
that may have had something to do with their separation.
See, this is territory I really want to explore because I'm really fascinated in what's going on in this particular relationship.
And I think that, again, we're going to get more and more sprinkles of the history as we go. And I think this is one where, they're not... we are already seeing it here. We're going to be hinted at things, and you really have to pay attention and read between the lines. I don't think they're necessarily going to hold our hands as we learn all of this.
And I'm all for that. I like the subtle.
I love that. Right. That we have to just pay attention and pick these things up on our own. And it's not necessarily going to be like, okay, here's the story of what happened.
Right. And Maggie ends up wondering why Sully didn't come after her. And so we get the hint that that's part of her reason.
Yeah, and I think this surprises her, right? Because she, in her mind, she kind of thinks like, well, her dad doesn't care about her. He's never paid any attention to her. He doesn't think that her being missing from his life has affected him at all, when clearly it has.
Right.
And this is all news to her.
Her lawyer ends up calling her to say that the insurance company is willing to offer a settlement and that she won't have to accept bullying.
Yeah, she doesn't want to take a settlement. She's like, I didn't do anything wrong. She keeps telling us throughout this episode, like, I did everything by the book. I didn't do anything wrong. And he insists, it's standard practice to settle. It doesn't mean you're required to accept any blame. And he hangs up on her before she can even respond to that.
Right. I'm just kind of... So at this point, she's been a doctor for a while, I'm gathering,
well,
right?
The award was for up-and-coming neurosurgeon, so she's...
I'm really surprised that she hasn't already experienced, like, some of this kind of thing already. That she hasn't been party to a lawsuit. I mean, I guess I don't know how common that is.
I don't know how frequently.
Yeah,
I mean...
I know it happens in the life of a doctor,
and I think we probably see more of it in fiction than it happens in real life.
Probably.
with medical drama shows.
Cal ends up knocking on the door and asking for help for Roy. He apparently fell.
Yeah, so Lola called Sully, and Sully told Cal to get Maggie. Roy fell and hit his head. Now, Maggie's first reaction is, you need to call an ambulance.
Right.
And Cal tells us they tried that. There's only one ambulance, and it's already out on another call.
That's not a good situation.
Yeah, so we're, like, really far from civilization here.
Right. So we have a brief Edna and Frank interaction, and she wonders when the last time they went on a hot date. And Frank is kind of clueless here, like, what do you mean? We see each other all the time.
And what's happening here is she's serving those honeymooners like a special meal, trying to help save their honeymoon after the stuff that we had learned earlier. And yeah, Frank doesn't see the need for them to have a romantic date.
It's funny because this is a subplot within the episode, but it's a very brief subplot because by the next time we see it, it's resolved.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a little funny moment. Roy, her granddaughter, and Cal are all tending to Roy.
Yeah.
Now, Maggie has issues with Lola.
She does. Definitely.
That's nowhere evident in this scene.
Yeah.
And I think that's a testament to Maggie's, like, professionalism.
Yeah.
She's in doctor mode here.
Right.
She's putting aside any animosity that she has.
On that note, this kind of comes back to what we were talking about earlier in the podcast. For Maggie's first response to be like, you need to call an ambulance. Like, on the surface, it might look like, oh, she's not trying to be helpful. You know, she's not really a team player here, you know. But when you look at her character, this is just showing her desire to follow procedure. Right? And that plays into everything that we're seeing with the Markov case that keeps coming up over and over in this episode. And it's hinting that she definitely did follow procedures because that's just who she is.
Right.
To do everything by the book, to the T. Like, that's what comes to her brain, you know?
Yep.
This is what has to happen. Last week she was, oh, he has to be evaluated. This week it's, oh, you have to call an ambulance.
Right.
Because that's how she was trained. That's how her brain works, is there's a certain order of which things has to happen. And she knows her place in that, you know, as a medical professional. And we're seeing, well, that doesn't necessarily, all goes out the window when you're in a small town and you're the only doctor around. Right. And what would this town do without Maggie? How have they survived as long as they have without this doctor?
I'm not sure, but there is an EMT. But at the same time, like, I don't know. Like, I guess maybe there isn't that big of a need for medical services to that extent. But, yeah, you got to wonder.
Yeah.
How they managed to get along without her. So Maggie seems to think the wound isn't that bad, but she takes his vitals and asks Cal to get some juice.
Yeah, Cal and Lola are both really helpful, like getting everything that she asks for. Well, Lola's a little less helpful. She's like, I don't live here, but I'll look for the stuff.
Right.
Again, pointing out that she's not there full time for her granddad, and she seems to actually not know a heck of a lot about what's going on with him. There was one moment that Maggie seemed a little confused that Lola was there. She's like, oh, he's your grandfather?
Didn't they already establish that?
We learned that last week.
Right, yeah.
I don't know if
well, yeah, okay.
Maggie was just a little too self-absorbed in her whole situation to pick up on that. But yeah, she missed that link somewhere. Now she knows. And I'm wondering, like, did she know Roy when she was younger? Like, she should have. It
doesn't seem like she did last week.
Right.
She certainly didn't seem to recognize him at all.
Right. Because, when she was asking Sydney about Lola last week, she was like, oh, she still lives here. And Sydney said, well, she lives in town, but her grandpa still lives here. Mm-hmm. So he was there.
Right.
I feel like she should have known him.
I mean, she hadn't seen him since she was 15, which was like, what, 15 years ago? So he probably looks quite a bit different, but still, I think she would be familiar with him. If he was in town living with them like that.
Right.
But, okay, so Cal ends up noticing that the food is untouched.
Yeah, the whole fridge is full of food, labeled by day. I'm guessing Edna cooked most of that.
He ends up getting some orange juice, which I don't think is a good call because, orange juice is very acidic.
Yeah, it was the only juice in the fridge, I think. Yeah. And Maggie had asked for juice because she was looking for some sugar.
Mm-hmm. And I guess that's a good source of sugar. And he quietly tells Maggie about the untouched food in the fridge.
He said, I don't think Roy's been eating. And Roy proves this by, he's not able to put the juice down. He was like, my stomach, I don't know, I can't drink this right now. So she examines his tummy, asks Lola how long he's had abdominal pain. Again, she's clueless. She's like, I didn't know he had abdominal pain.
Right.
And Roy again forgets that his wife Ruth is gone, which is super sad.
He ends up talking about her to Cal and saying that, she would, you get on her bad side and you better watch out. And then he starts to remember and he starts crying and after realizing the fact that she is in fact dead. And so this we certainly already kind of knew this, but this is some kind of dementia or Alzheimer's going on here. So there really should be someone full-time taking care of this guy.
And that's, Maggie's point is, well, we need an official evaluation so that we can get him treatment that he needs.
Like, I mean, if, okay, it's nice that the entire town is helping out, but there should be one person there always, basically, at this point.
Or at least take turns having somebody there always.
Right.
Not just checking in on him. So yeah, Maggie gets him all patched up and tells Lola, that's going to be okay, but you should really check with the doctor about his abdominal pain. She says she'll call them as soon as they all leave. But then Roy passes out. And that puts more urgency on the situation. They again call the ambulance. And it must have been done with its call because it comes straight away this time. And I was really confused by this. Because in the ambulance is Connie and Rafe.
Right.
Connie being Jackson's mom. Rafe works with her. We already learned that. What we learned last week is they work for the fire department.
Right.
And they volunteer for search and rescue.
Right. And they also run the ambulance?
Now, yeah, the ambulance is not what I thought when we're talking about search and rescue. I was picturing like
boats?
Right. Like a Coast Guard type of search and rescue. Like you go out on the boat or, even maybe in the woods, like this is the woods. You're helping with emergency situations as a volunteer, like extra thing on top of the official, like employed people that do that.
So she's not only an EMT, a firefighter, and search and rescue. That seems like a.
Are there is this is this search and rescue the ambulance?
Right. I don't know. Or maybe it was something different.
Like, is the fire department the same thing as the ambulance?
Right.
Like they do both. Or are there no paid paramedics? I was really confused.
Right.
Like these are only two medical professionals.
Yes.
At all. They do it all.
Right.
So you better not have a fire and a medical emergency at the same time.
Otherwise, you're screwed. And you have to decide, do you want the building to burn down or do you want to save the person who's in medical crisis? I kind of hope we get some more clarification as to what this situation actually is.
But Connie told Maggie, you did just fine on the field because she had expressed some concern that she wouldn't have been good at a field doctor. And remember, Connie had said we could really use a doctor on search and rescue.
Right.
Well, you really could if this is search and rescue. Your entire medical 911 department. If this is it, you really do need a doctor.
Yeah, maybe you should consider, putting out an ad or something to get some doctors in here. All right, so Cal and Maggie end up bonding. She ends up apologizing, saying that she may have come off a little rude, and he jokes, "Which time?"
Yeah.
And she says she deserves it, and I agree. She totally
Absolutely.
does.
Yeah. And so yeah, the whole thing has really brought them together.
Mhm.
Who knew a head wound is all you need
Yes.
to get a new start and patch things up. And we learned during this conversation she's been gone for about 15 years.
Right.
So yeah, she's 30.
That's the impression I get.
Yeah. And are we still thinking Cal's like 40?
I mean,
The actor is.
The actor is. He could be playing younger.
Yeah.
Who knows?
We were just questioning everybody's ages last week, and
Right.
in comparison to each other.
I mean, I don't think, as far as romance concerned, a 10-year difference between a 30 and a 40-year-old is a big deal.
Right.
So if he is, he is. If he's not, he's not. Not really sure. But so she asks why he's considered the mystery man, and asks what his real name is. He doesn't know why he's considered. He didn't even know.
He's like, I never heard that before.
She goes with Calvin, but apparently, nope, that's not the answer.
And I think we're going to have this running joke for a while, that she tries every name imaginable that starts with Cal, trying to guess what his full name is. My guess is that Cal's his full name, and that's what we'll eventually learn, is it doesn't stand for anything.
I said in the Facebook group I belong on the show that I kind of like Calvert. I do kind of like that. I think that was one of her guesses in this episode, too. So we get a note on her door. The fax came with the information on the case, her lawsuit.
Yeah, it's all of Kevin's medical records.
We have a brief shot of Sully on the dock looking conflicted. And then we see Frank, who set up a little date with Edna.
Yeah, he brings her flowers and invites her to have a romantic picnic dinner.
And he says he's worried about Sully. And once again, he doesn't specifically say why he's worried about Sully. But my guess is he's worried that the situation with Maggie is going to cause him to fall off the wagon.
Yeah, I had the same impression.
So we're back with Sully and Maggie.
And she's poring over Kevin's medical records. She's trying to see if she missed something. Again, I went by the book. I did everything I was supposed to do. What did I miss? Why did he die? And is it my fault?
Right. Sully ends up feeding Maggie, and she ends up telling him that she tossed his expired blood pressure medicine and suggests getting an updated subscription or prescription. Prescription is the more accurate
He
word.
says he doesn't need it.
Right.
He's like, I don't need the heart pills. I'm fine.
We get a look at his bills, and we see that some things are past due. That's not a good sign.
We've seen those a few times. We're definitely getting hints that there are some financial difficulties here. I'm wondering if that's going to be resolved. Are we going to have some big fundraiser for them? I don't know where we're going with that, but...
He just basically shoves the bills in a drawer to not deal with them, and that's similar to how I deal with my bills sometimes. She asks about the papers. Oh, Sully ends up asking about the papers she's looking through, and Maggie explains the lawsuit situation. Sully ends up emphasizing with the mother. He says it's not about her, it's about the grief. She's devastated about losing a child, and he's relating to the situation. Now, is that because of Maggie, or did they, in fact, at some point lose another child?
Right. And I think could go either way.
Because he's acting like
is he comparing
death.
Losing her
Right.
to the same thing as like your child dies? Obviously, it's not the same thing.
Right.
So yeah, it's possible there was another child here that we haven't mentioned yet, or he's just like really kind of laying on the guilt, like, yeah, I know what it feels like to lose a child because I lost you. But yeah, I found it real interesting. Maggie's focusing on like, why is Claire doing this to me?
Right.
And he's focusing on that poor woman. You know, he doesn't even worry about the lawsuit. He's just like, wow, that poor woman lost her son.
Now that says something interesting about both characters. I'm not sure what it says about Maggie exactly, that she's totally focused on what's happening to her.
I think she hasn't looked beyond herself yet.
Right. She's not seeing beyond her own nose in this particular situation.
Also, something that happened in this scene is, I'm going to have to agree to disagree with Sully. Mayonnaise certainly does go bad.
Okay.
He told her that's a myth. Mayonnaise doesn't go bad.
Well,
it does.
If we ever manage to get Scott Patterson on, you can let him know.
Mayonnaise, lasts a while. It doesn't go bad in 2 weeks like milk or something, but it does eventually go bad.
Right, yes. So Maggie he says he's going to go to bed, and it doesn't seem like he ever actually manages to do that.
Yeah, he seems very annoyed by that later, that he wasn't able to.
Maggie thanks him for the sandwich and for keeping out the mural. He smiles and goes to bed.
Yeah, and she does the stupidest thing she could do.
Right.
She picks up her phone and she calls Claire Markiff.
Now, I'm sure she has some kind of caller ID and knows that she called.
I mean, she's going to know somebody called her.
Right.
And she ends up getting a voicemail, and it was Kevin's voice on the voicemail, which is gut-wrenching.
Right.
Right. He's like, my mom doesn't know how to set this up, so I'm doing it for her. Oh, my goodness. But no, you don't call the person who's suing you.
Right.
That's pretty much the opposite of what your lawyer told you to do, which was to stand down.
Right. I get the feeling that Maggie is smart, because she had to be a doctor, but she's also kind of dumb at the same time.
Like, that's a big no-no.
Yeah.
And I don't know what she was going to say to her. Was she going to look for clarification about the lawsuit and insist that she didn't do anything wrong, or was she actually going to give condolences?
I don't think she thought that through, based on the fact that she quickly hangs up.
Yeah, so that was just bad. And we know that's going to come back and bite her. You can't do that.
I know that because it's in the episode descriptions for the season.
You read all the descriptions?
I did.
Ugh.
I mean, they don't reveal much, but they give
no spoilers.
They give the general idea of where the series is headed.
I mean, a lot of people listening to us have probably already watched the show since it is available in other places, but we've only had access to episodes. We're watching as it's being released in the U.S., and I don't want any big spoilers. Of course, I could look up every script. I'm sure they're out there, but I don't want to know. I want to enjoy it.
I have forgotten most of what I read anyway, because my memory is that of Roy's almost. All right, so we're back at Rob's, and his place is called what again? Shandon's.
Yeah, we're back at Shandon's, and
eventually going to remember
this
that.
place has a really hopping night scene, unlike any diner I've ever seen.
Yeah, I was thinking that. Like, this is a diner and a bar?
Yeah, it's...
Like, I'm really confused.
I mean, I knew that already. They serve alcohol.
Right.
Like we know Rob's a bartender. We talked about that with Reed.
Yep.
But, he meant like, oh, he's a bartender.
Right, yeah.
Not like they serve drinks with lunch. Like, I mean, we have diners that do that too. They have, alcohol at the register or whatever, but... Like, yeah, no, this is a hopping place. We're open at 5 a.m. for breakfast, and we stay open till 2 a.m. for the bar.
And that's a pretty long day for...
And it's just Rob and Sydney running this place? Do they have employees? Because...
I don't know.
Those are some really long days.
It's the same thing with, having a firefighter,
maybe they
EMT, and...
Maybe they don't do this every night.
Right,
maybe only on the weekends or whatever. They're open late.
So there's a couple of drinks, and they start to hit on Maggie. Rob says, okay, you guys are done.
Yeah, it's a couple of, tourists.
Right.
And
they don't want to listen, so Rob comes back with a bat and says, hey, look, when I say you're done, you're done.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it. If Reed Price comes to me and says, I'm done, I'm done. Okay, you don't have to come at me with a bat.
Especially with that baseball bat.
Right.
And, with inside knowledge, I made this comment on Twitter. I know that Reed Price is a lot more comfortable holding that baseball bat. He's a former baseball player.
Is he? I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He's a lot more comfortable with that bat than, pouring drinks. As he told us, he's not very good at pouring those shots.
Did he play in the major leagues, or did he not get that far?
Played in the minor leagues?
The minor leagues?
I might be making that. I don't know sports.
I mean, I could always look it up.
Look it up.
Yeah,
I'm sure he'd be happy to tell you all about it.
Right.
But yeah, Reed Price had told us he's never worked as a bartender and, did a lot of spills in scenes where he has to pour drinks.
The other thing that he mentioned, is that Maggie, the actress who plays her, is a bartender at one point.
Is that what he was talking about?
Yeah, this is the actress that he was talking about, having had some bartending experience.
Okay. I'll have to revisit that part of the interview because that was months ago when we spoke to him and we hadn't seen any of this yet.
Right. So now it's kind of funny rewatching that interview, like knowing what he's talking about now.
Right.
So yeah, it's definitely something to revisit.
So yeah, those two guys, they were being really jerky with they were kind of hitting on Maggie and Sydney, and we learn Rob's a really good guy standing up for them here.
Yep. Maggie and Sydney end up drinking. Cal is in the corner.
Yeah, all by himself.
That's kind of sad. I wonder what his deal is.
Well, we were told he stays to himself. So, yeah that's what he does.
But he's looking really emotional at this moment. The EMT kid, his name is what?
Rafe.
It's not Jackson, I know that much. It's the other kid.
The other kid, that's Rafe.
All right. So they look really similar is the problem.
I don't think so, but okay.
Well, I guess maybe they're just both young.
You don't have them in your sights yet.
Right. So he offers to wear the uniform for Sydney.
Yeah, so we learned that there is definitely something going on between them.
She says that they're friends with occasional benefits. Maggie ends up talking about Andrew. She's on the fence as far as living with him.
Yeah, she's like, we were talking about moving in together, but I don't know now. When you were talking about moving in together, it was him saying, let's move in together, and she changed the subject. That was that conversation.
So that's not really a conversation about living together at all, really.
I mean, unless there were other conversations, but the one that we saw in the limo, I got the impression she wasn't all that interested in,
right.
Advancing their relationship.
So we see the EMT, what's his name again?
Rafe.
See, that memory thing I was just talking about? Rafe.
Yeah, you got to get it in your notes or it doesn't exist.
Rafe, well, now that I know the difference between the two characters in the credits, I can put it in my notes. But so she ends up dancing with Sydney. Cal and Maggie exchange glances from afar. Sully ends up taking out a photo album.
Yeah, we see him reminiscing. It's a photo album full of pictures of Maggie. He's reminiscing about her youth. And then he's looking at his AA chip, which is where we get confirmation about the meetings we alluded to earlier.
That is visual confirmation that Sully is in fact a recovering alcoholic. And, this is an example of watching with your eyes that you busted on me for last week, not noticing in our Quantum Leap podcast.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Back at Shandon's diner, Sydney and Maggie do some karaoke to the amusement of Rob, Cal, and the EMT, Rafe. Not Ralph.
Yeah, they sing I Will Survive,
yep.
Which seems pretty appropriate for
it does.
Maggie's situation.
The song ends, they all end up clapping, and Sydney ends up leaving with the Rafe character to go get Lucky. At least that's the impression that we're getting
definitely,
here.
Yeah.
Maggie takes a couple of beers, which she gets on the house from Rob.
Yeah, she goes to buy Cal a beer, but Rob gives them to her on the house.
I'm surprised she doesn't cut her off at this point because she's pretty drunk.
She's not feeling any pain. But do any of the businesses in this town make any money?
I don't know.
All they do is give things away for free.
I would have loved to have seen Rob threaten Maggie like, when I say you're done, you're done. But anyway, so she goes to Cal with a peace offering of the beers, and she keeps trying to guess his name. I'm thinking this is where Calbert is brought up.
I have in my notes that she tries the name Callum.
Callum? Okay.
Which I've never heard that one.
That's interesting. Calamine, maybe?
She says she wants to do over. She wants to start over, which he already offered that last week, and she was like, nah.
Right, yeah.
So now they're both ready to okay, let's bury the hatchet and start over.
Her attitude towards Cal is very different in this episode.
Yeah.
Way calmer than the total hostility from last week.
It might be the alcohol.
Maybe. She's feeling good. But, even earlier in this episode, it's not quite the level of hostility that it was in the previous episode.
Yeah, well, he was a really good nurse for her during the whole Roy thing. Yep. So maybe she saw, oh, hey, he's maybe useful and a good guy, and, I was too hard on him.
So she ends up saying that she needs to go home, and he offers to walk her back.
He offers to walk her home.
I'm pretty sure this is where your point comes in.
And, yes. Okay, I get that we're promoting not drinking and driving. Very responsible. We're walking. Great.
Don't drink and drive, kids.
Don't drink and drive. But they could have fixed this, my problem here, by not showing a million establishing shots between the drive from Sullivan's Crossing to the diner.
Maybe it's a quicker walk than it is a drive.
Because it does not look like walking distance based on those establishing shots that we saw. They drove past the entire lake and a whole highway. It wasn't next door.
I'm sure it's only a 30-mile walk.
It did not look like it was walking distance, but now they're walking home. And again, yes, that fits here perfect that you should walk home, but I just feel like they shouldn't have tried establishing shots to make it look so far away. I feel like that's the problem is there was too many establishing shots where I was like, oh, this is far away.
Right.
Where it feels like in everything else it is closer. Everybody goes there. It's the only place to go, I guess.
Right.
But I didn't feel like walking distance from what we saw earlier, and that was just my problem with that. But it did allow for this really romantic stroll between Maggie and Cal. And
they look up at the stars.
Yeah, they did some stargazing. Again, she's feeling no pain. He's holding her up at a few points where he's not sure she can even walk straight.
Right. And then we have Andrew walking out of the house.
We got another put one foot in front of the other reference.
Oh, yep, I do remember that.
Yeah, he said it too. And she's like, I think I can do that. And, it was physically walking we're talking about, but also, whole metaphorically, you can do this.
Right.
All of that. And yeah, it felt like they were about to kiss as they approached Sully's porch. Like they had one of those like end of a date moments, right? And like you said, they're interrupted by Andrew, again, played by Alan Hocko.
Yep.
And he has driven the 10 hours, crossed country lines to go see Maggie. Maggie, who may have forgotten at this point that she has a boyfriend.
Yeah, it certainly seems like that. She recovers pretty nicely here. Cal graciously says goodnight, and you can see that there's like a little bit of a tension there between him and Andrew. Sully ends up going to bed again.
Yeah, he's like, I guess I can finally go to bed now that you two found each other.
And so she ends up showing Andrew to the bedroom. He apologizes for what he said, and remind me what that was exactly.
Okay, so when they had talked when she first came to Sullivan's Crossing, and he was like, why'd you leave without telling me? Which, yeah, Maggie, that was not
pretty
cool,
crappy.
To, go to another country without telling your boyfriend. He had basically insinuated that Maggie should have known what Bob was up to. Like, maybe she was culpable in it in some way. And, like, she should have known better that he was doing something wrong. And so that's what they're talking about. He's like, I shouldn't have said that. And she's like, no, you should not have said that. And, yeah, I mean, if your boyfriend just drove 10 hours across country lines to come apologize in person, I think he deserves a fair chance.
I would agree. I mean, I don't necessarily like this guy too much.
I mean, we don't know him very well.
Right, yeah.
But he has so far done multiple big romantic gestures.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't seem like a bad guy. But we're clearly supposed to be rooting for Cal.
Yeah.
So they end up kissing. It looks like they're going to go further than that. Cal, meanwhile, is alone, drinking a beer in his apartment.
And, he's in his cabin. I'm thinking he lives on the campgrounds.
Yeah.
And he's in like a log cabin.
He goes to a calendar and circles July 22nd. What is the significance of that?
I have no idea. He flipped it from June. So I think it's currently June. Like they've made mention that it's the start of the season. Tourists are just starting to arrive. So it's, I think, early June right now. And he flipped to July and circled Monday, July 22nd.
Yeah, and that's interesting. I don't know what that's
what's
about.
happening on July 22nd? Does this have something to do with Maggie?
Right.
Like, what's going on here?
Is he going to try to not see her until then, and then so he'll get over her? Is he deciding that he's going to quit drinking, and this is the month from that? Or is it the 22nd at this point?
I have no idea.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's interesting. I'm sure they'll get back to that. Don't know what that's about. So Andrew and Maggie, meanwhile, they don't end up sleeping together.
Yeah,
I mean, as far as like,
she's too tired.
Yeah, she just ends up falling asleep. He looks conflicted and sad, and that is where the episode.
That's where the episode ends. And we got previews for the next episode.
I didn't see that.
Oh, you didn't see the previews?
Nope.
Okay. It hints at some pretty heavy jealousy coming from both men.
Okay.
And we're definitely leaning into a love triangle.
Oh, joy.
Between Maggie and Cal and Andrew.
That's my favorite plot device ever.
we get some backhand comments from both men about the other.
Did I make that joke last week in the Sullivan's Crossing podcast?
Probably.
Or was that in Quantum Leap? Because I think I made similar comments.
Oh, it may have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got a lot of love triangles happening in our worlds that we talk about.
Yeah, so that seems like it's going to be interesting. The episode description seems to suggest that Maggie's not all that thrilled with Andrew being here.
Yeah, I mean, again, from the moment we met him, we don't really feel like she's all that committed to that relationship. Right. I definitely think he's more vested than she is. Especially since, we are being pushed towards shipping her with Cal. Right from the beginning.
In this episode, it makes a little bit more sense than it did last week.
Yeah, for sure.
Quite a bit less hostility than there was the previous week. Do we have anything else to say about this episode?
That's all I have in my notes. I think it was great character development. I love that we got to see more of all of these people. I'm loving the soundtrack.
Yes.
There's a lot of great music in this series.
More Reed Price.
I'll
remember to, not drink too much in his presence. And if he tells me to stop, I'm going to stop. Doesn't have to hit me with a baseball bat. All right. So I guess we're done. If you like this podcast, or actually, I'm sorry, we want to hear from you. We want to know if you like this podcast, what you think of this episode, so on and so forth. Stacie can be reached at?
I can be reached on Twitter, X, Instagram, and Threads at TVN Coupon Talk.
If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can follow one of my Core Productions Facebook pages. You can buy something from the Core Productions store on Zazzle, which doesn't have any Sullivan's Crossings products currently, but that could change.
But lots of podcast merch.
Yes. And you can buy me a coffee, which is a new way to support content creators such as ourselves. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video as well as subscribing to our channel. This is Dave and Stacie from Core Productions signing off.